Guys, this was interesting. Just got done doing a reading with cards and numerology, so that was a blast.
Yep.
That was like nailed it just right down the line. So I encourage everybody to listen to that. But I kind of wanted to get a little bit into, I have a lot of young entrepreneurs that listen to the show, and I wanted to get into a little bit about following your passion, going in the direction that you know that you should go into. So if you wouldn't mind, I want to make sure I plug your YouTube and Instagram. Mm-hmm. So let's do that now and then kind of introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll start getting into your life, if that's fine.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. So my YouTube channel is called The CrystalGuy, where I talk about crystals and their healing properties. It's really good for people that want to get into it or don't know much about it. And It's also fun for people that have been into it for a few years because it's a new approach to talking about crystals. Short clips, very YouTube friendly, very TikTok with a lot of cuts and all that kind of stuff. So I find it to be really helpful for people. So that's the YouTube, The Crystal Guy. And then on Instagram, I'm at The Crystal Guy 23.
So at The Crystal Guy 23.
23, yes.
And then there's information in there if they want to get a reading or whatever.
Yep, absolutely. And I post on there pretty frequently too.
Yeah, which I'm going to get two of my friends to get a reading, so that'll be awesome. Yeah, we're going to be rolling on that. So let's start from the very beginning, because obviously there was something going on special inside of you that led you in this direction. And I know you have some acting and stuff like that, in your background, and we'll get into that. But what's the earliest memory you remember of something being unique, where you were kind of catching on to? I have this. I'm picking things up.
Intuition,
type of a thing. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I always had it, and I always just, as a kid, I would always just say things, and people are like, "Where did that come from?" So I'm discovering now that really what my psychic gift would be classified as would be clairsentience. So what that is there's clairaudience, where you hear things, there's clairvoyance, where you see things, and there's other clairs. For me, it's really a feeling, a knowingness. It's just like knowing that it's so, and then feeling comfortable enough to express that with people.
So and so just at a young age, you were kind of just, you would be able to pick up on things? Or?
Yeah, and I would just say crazy stuff, and people were like, wait, how did you know that? Or certain things like that. And but honestly, I grew up eating a lot of fast food, like fast food only pretty much. And I think for a long time, what I was putting into my body and kind of the lifestyle I was leading, it wasn't encouraging the sharpness of the intuition, so to speak.
Yeah, no. And so were you were raised in California?
Yeah, in California. But then I went to NYU for school, for university. And it was when I got to NYU, I went really strong opposite way of fast food. So it was like all vegan and organic and all this stuff. And this was back in 2006 in New York City. So it was really expensive to do it. But I did it anyway. And that's when crazy shit started happening. So I would get like visions, like with my third eye, what people talk about. I didn't know what it was back then, but I would just get like, I'd be laying down and all of a sudden the middle of my forehead would really start to tingle and just be really hot. And then I would get all these visions that would come in. And then I remember too, I went to school for musical theater actually. And I remember being in a show and I started to see auras around people. And I would give backstage, I'd give aura readings, like, oh, this is the color I'm seeing. And they're always like, that's my favorite color, and certain things like that. So it just kind of built from there. And then really when I started getting into crystals a few years ago, like I was into them as a kid, as a lot of kids are into rocks and collecting that kind of birthstones and that kind of stuff. But then more recently is really getting into the crystals. And I think that's what really helped to open up and sharpen my intuitive gifts.
So you're living in California. What part of California?
I grew up in Orange County, right by Disneyland. So I pretty much grew up next to Disneyland.
Right there.
Yes.
You and Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Do you guys have like the you can go anytime pass?
Oh yeah.
What's the California? What is it? It's like residence.
Yeah, it's the SoCal residence.
Yes.
But it's actually really funny. It's like my parents would drop me and my friends off at Disneyland instead of like a daycare or summer school or anything like that.
That makes sense though.
They got us the cheap phones that you prepay, and they're like, go to Disneyland because it's super safe. It's mega safe, And it's funny looking back on it, how much magical, esoteric stuff is just filled at Disneyland is filled with.
Do you think Walt Disney was involved in? He was a Mason, right?
Yeah, he was a Mason for sure. And then like their Club 33 that they have there is a secret, or it's like a members only restaurant that they have. I've eaten there before, and it's very much like la-di-da. You have to be in the know, and you have to pay all this money to be able to be a member and all this stuff. Well, 33. There's 33 degrees in Freemasonry.
Yes.
So Club 33 alludes to that. And also too, inside they have the twin pillars right when you walk in. And for Freemasons, that's like the twin pillars of Solomon is in every Freemason temple that they have.
Yes.
So it's like, and the list goes on and on. There's just so much. And then I'm sitting there, eating the food, and you can see into where they do the Phantasmic show, which is that water show.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is Mickey Mouse with a wizard's hat, conjuring the broom, who then gets out of control. It's all magic, and like all of it. It really has. It's fun when you go back.
So were you, as a child, when you would go there, were you always are those the things you would pick out and kind of be really mesmerized by?
Looking back on it now, I guess I did. I think as a kid, I was just like wowed by the magicianship, so to speak, like the illusion that they were putting on. But definitely now looking back, there was something behind that I could sense and feel.
Yeah, and you were we talked about this before, but you were raised in Quaker Lutheran home. Yep. So was it very conservative?
Yeah, it was extremely conservative.
I know Orange County is pretty conservative.
It's super. So both my parents grew up super Catholic, and so they're like, easing up a little bit was going Quaker to the Friends Christian Church, and they were actually pretty chill. Actually, it wasn't so bad. And then for high school, I went to Lutheran school. But then I went to NYU. And so then it was the whole flip turned upside down, the whole...
How was, so when you became, 12, 13, 14, was there a whole dynamic of you discovering who you were? And then did these gifts start happening?
Honestly, I was just focused on all the activities. Like I was so busy all the time.
Were you acting then?
I was acting then. Yep.
Oh, okay.
And then I was also just like... in leadership in school and sports, track and field, and some football, and just like being really, really busy, keeping up myself really busy. So to be honest with you, I mean, I'm sure I had intuitive gifts the whole time, but it really hasn't been until till the last few years is when it's really starting to come in.
So, because I always ask people whenever I meet somebody that seems to be very like old soul or whatever. Whenever you were, that transition from high school to going to New York, have you always kind of been influenced by is it the outside, or are you kind of more intuitive with making your own path?
Well, we kind of talked about this a little bit in the reading because we shared some numbers, but I think for a long time, it was me people pleasing and trying to do the right thing and be right by my parents and getting the job that would get me the car, that would get me the house, that would,
because you did commercials and stuff like that.
Right?
Yeah. So how early did you start when you were acting?
Oh, I started acting when I was in first grade. I think my mom took me to LA and I got an agent and started acting as a kid, like a little kid actor. I mean, that goes back to that. When I was a kid, I would just say stuff and they would be like, what? Like they loved me in that scenario because I would just like let it fly. And I would just like,
you were really open with being able to understand. So you had the people pleasing there, but then the other side, you had this powerful gift that you were able to use when you were in front of a camera.
Yes.
Yep. And that would come out.
It's like a channeling type of a thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's like helps to focus in. But to be honest with you, with the psychic gifts is like, in this society, and also to like being a male, it's not necessarily so encouraged. And also to in the very Christian environment I grew up in, it was very much not really talked about or kind of just dismissed as hooey.
So in high school, is that where, because you're not just a male, you're a gay male, if you want to put identity.
Yeah.
Were you exploring that in high school, or when did that begin? Because I get a lot of DMs and it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'll get a ton. No, but people ask that, like entrepreneurs, there's almost like this underlying issue. Same with the military. When I was in the military, there's almost, and thank God it's going away. But like you know, you're hustle and you're a man, and you know, you played football and you're an entrepreneur. You know, So I always try to encourage people, you know, to be passionate about whatever direction they want to go in their life.
Yes,
and to be open and honest with yourself.
Yes,
because that's the card. You know, so that's why I'm asking that question.
No, I mean, I try not to beat myself up too much about it, but it's looking back, I was definitely doing everything for everyone else,
right?
And just trying to make everybody else happy and keep the peace.
So you had girlfriends?
Oh yeah, I had girlfriends. Oh yeah, all the way through up till I went to NYU.
Oh,
you know, it's like freshman year. Like we broke up. You know, the girlfriend I had for 3 years, and then started dating guys. You know, and that was really hard. You know, especially for the family and all this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Like Orange County conservative.
Oh yeah,
family.
It was like. It's our fault for sending you to NYU.
So they blame New York.
Yeah. It happens.
Damn big city. That's funny. I mean, you were right by LA, so it wouldn't have mattered either way.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. But yeah. So now,
why do you think that is? Why do you think, especially dads, our male figures, why do you think they blame themselves when their son says they're gay? These are questions I've been interested in asking. So
yeah, well, I think
it's so wrong, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's how they were programmed to be and how they were programmed to think, and I think that sometimes you wanna take sides and be divisive. You know, and politics will do that to you too. It's like if you're Republican, then you're not for gay marriage, right? And it's like, wait, what does that have to do?
Yes, yeah.
So it's like, I just think in general, it's just this like polarizing type of a mindset, but it's like what you said, it's thank God it's starting to ease up and people are starting to be more open-minded.
How would, if you could redo it all over again and you're a 22, 23-year-old male that's wanting to talk to his parents, what advice would you give him?
I would say just be honest and do it face to face too. I think that helps because my mom, right.
Hey, mom.
Right. And also too, I would just recommend being very honest because I told my mom in person and that went one way and it was like not easy, but it happened. And then I was too afraid to tell my dad and he ended up finding out. And that ended up being way worse than if I would have just told him, you know? And it's like, it's a different story when you're feeling like you're sneaking around behind their backs, you know? And on that same note, it was a really hard time for them. It was 2008 when all that stock market stuff happened. Yes. So they pretty much lost everything. Like they lost like their businesses and they worked very, very hard. And then at the same time, my grandmother died, which was my mom's best friend. And this was all happening when I got my first boyfriend and I was at NYU. And so I actually chose to withhold the information and I'm actually really glad that I did. And after the fact, they both thanked me for it because it was just not the right time for them to be able to accept it. And so when I told my mom, it was enough after that, their drama that I was able to do that. And the only regret I had is not telling my dad at the same time that I told my mom.
But see, you know, that's beautiful. I'm glad that you were able to see that because whenever you're being unselfish and allowing that to flow through you, timing will happen perfectly. You know, so you were being unselfish because you knew what was going on in front of them and you would also anticipate the reaction to it. Yeah. But you were like, I'm going to wait. All this horrific things that just happened, you know, I don't need to add this to their life. So I'll wait and then demonstrate that. And I always see that whenever we wait for things in an unselfish way, they always turn out good. How's your relationship with your parents now?
Great. They're super awesome. And my boyfriend Greg is here in the studio and they love him. Sometimes I feel like they like him more than they like me. So it's really, really, really cool. It's so funny how things, because when I talk to friends, it's always the same way. It's like, you know, it just takes time for acceptance and being patient and understanding that people, and you had shared this in the reading, understanding that we're all the same and people grew up in different formats in different ways, whether wrong or right. You know? Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's awesome. So were you doing acting in New York too? Yeah. When you were in college? Yes, I was mostly of the stage kind. So I was up on stage singing and dancing.
That's a lot of hard work.
It is. It's a lot of work. And it's like we were talking with our numbers that we share, it's a lot of energy. So that was really nice for me as a young person to be able to expel and get through that energy. and to inspire and uplift other people through the performance. So that was a big...
Well, you were probably working 6-7 days a week, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Making no money, touring all over the place, living out of a suitcase. Like, oh, yeah, definitely. But I loved it, I wouldn't have changed anything. And I think basically, too, with this, what I want to make sure to get through with this podcast is I feel like my life has definitely given me opportunities to get really into certain things and then to feel when that chapter of my life is over and it's time to move on to the next thing. And I think that's really important for entrepreneurs to keep in mind too. It's that sometimes we want to make the thing we're doing right now the end all be all, but it's I think important too to be able to step back and look at the big picture and see things as stepping stones to the next, like how it leads to the next. So, and in my life too is the times I've noticed where I was ignoring the signs of like, it's time to move on, this chapter's over. Then life will start throwing stuff your way, and it's like, okay, fine, I'll get it. I'll do something else. I'll go.
So were you? So you were going to college. You were on stage. What were you studying in college?
I studied musical theater at Tisch Drama, just Tisch School of the Arts in the drama department, and then I also got a minor in media, culture, and communications.
So you were a full bore. 110% in.
I loved college. I loved school. I loved being in the city. I loved that energy. It was just absolutely awesome.
And so being on stage, you were pretty much busy. I mean, constantly. Like there was no, if you're doing school and stage at the same time, there was absolutely no.
Oh yeah. And I would do school and then I would audition right before the summer and go off and do summer stock. And so I'd work in the summers in Maine or Pennsylvania.
How did you deal with auditions being such a people pleaser?
It was hard. The auditions were definitely tough. And looking back, I could have been more like solid in who I am as myself. Cause like, that's a really interesting question that you asked because it is really tricky for a people pleaser to be in the audition. And I think that's one of the reasons why that has been part of my path. And I'm still acting. So I still need to audition. And so it's just this constant thing for me. It's part of my life path. It's my life's purpose is to really work on that and to be really solid in myself and who I am and not try to just be whatever they want me to be.
Yeah, that's so I want people to understand when you go to audition how ruthless it is.
Oh, yeah.
And how ruthless they are.
Oh man. Oh, especially in New York, in the theater district and Broadway, and it's like the lines wrapping around the block and it's 23 degrees outside and you're waiting all day. You might not even get seen at all. And it's just, they bring you, a lot of times they'll just bring you into the room and they'll line you up like 50 people and then they'll just go, yes. Okay, thank you everyone. And you've been waiting in line since 4 a.m. to get seen, to be able to sing for them or dance for them or whatever, or act for them, whatever you're trying to do. And then they just say go.
They just look at you and make a decision.
They just look at you. Yeah. So it can be really tricky.
Yeah. I've had friends that were actresses or actors and it's the same. They said it is absolutely ruthless. So that's why I was wondering, because, us having the same number, that would get me down. I would be like really depressed. Yeah.
It's draining. The good news is now with the COVID stuff, all the auditions are self-taped. So you get to record yourself and make sure you're happy with it, and then you get to send it. So that's pretty cool.
How many takes did you do on those?
Oh gosh, I do so many. I did 2 of them this week, and I was like, I just nailed it. And then
we got to ask your boyfriend. Does he self-critique himself?
Oh yeah.
He's his own worst critic. Yeah, and then it's all works out. So you're in college, you're going through these, and then you said you're on the road.
Yes, traveling a lot.
What type of plays were you doing? It was stage
musicals, staged musicals. Yeah, so it's all types of like the Broadway types musicals that you see that go on the tours.
Right. So you're singing. All that, yeah. So that's crazy.
It was crazy. And then basically after a while of doing that, I was just like, boom, like, no, like I need to go back to California. I was in the subway and I was trying to get up to the upper west side where I lived, like in the outskirts of Manhattan. And I couldn't get the subway. Like the subway just like wouldn't come. And then all of a sudden, like this thing that I thought the subway was coming in. It was like 2:00 in the morning. I was coming home from a party and I just wanted to get home. And then the subway thing comes up on the track and it stops and it just makes this loud sound. It's like, I felt it in my bones and I was like, it's time to move out of New York. And it was like 2 days later I left. It was just this feeling that came and I was like, it was almost like a sign that I dreamt about or I had my feelers out for, and that was that moment. And I listened and I moved away.
How can you, because this intrigues me about you, how when you make a decision, especially something drastic, how are you able to be so confident in that decision?
Well, the signs, I think, like, you know, if you really can pay attention to the signs, like even just before moving out here to Albuquerque, Greg can attest, the signs were all written all over the walls. And it was just like, okay, we got to do something. We got to make a change. And then, you know, we said some prayers and we did our thing that we do together. And then all of a sudden an opportunity presented and we were like, okay, we're going to jump on it, because the signs, if we were paying attention leading up to that moment, and we're like, okay, it's time.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, so I left New York and I went back to LA. And so I moved to Beverly Hills, like, you know, nothing super fancy. And I got a job waiting tables there. So about a month in waiting tables at this fancy schmancy restaurant in Beverly Hills, one of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills came in, and she came in with Paris Hilton and her other nieces, because Paris Hilton is her niece. And I was familiar with her from the show because my friends were super into it in musical theater school, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And basically I waited her table and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, you're not like a waiter like forever, right?" And I'm like, "No, well, I was acting in New York and I want to transition to something else. Not really sure what it is quite yet." And she goes, "You should work for my husband." And I was like, "What?" She goes, "Give me your phone." And I give her my phone and she puts her number in it and texts her. And she goes, "You're going to get a call tomorrow and I'm getting you that job." And I was like, "What?" And then I got a...
That's crazy that she had that ability just to trust you right off the bat.
Oh, yeah. And so the job was actually being his assistant. And looking back on it, it was really interesting timing, because on the show, on the Beverly Hills Housewives, it was like 6 seasons in or something crazy. So they were really looking for storylines. And so that was the season where they were really going after her husband for infidelity, for cheating.
Oh.
So I think what part of the big reason was to not have like a female assistant for that season, was to have a male, just to kind of
that makes sense.
You know, politically to kind of, it worked out for me. It was great, you know,
exactly.
and like my first day, I'm showing a $25 million house. Like he was like, "Oh, go turn on all the lights there." And so I did. And then he was like, "Oh, I can't make it." So here I'm, my first day, I'm showing all these like diplomat looking people this $25 million house across the street from the Playboy Mansion. And it's just like, this was the world I was living in all of a sudden.
That's so crazy. One minute you're a waiter.
Yep.
And then the next minute you're, and I always tell people that, you know, and that's something that you decided to do. You went in a part of town where there's people that are influential, and then you found a job, and then just being in that vicinity of people. And I always tell entrepreneurs that, you know, everybody doesn't have enough humility to, you know, it's like you're saying, waiting around the block for 4 a.m, or putting yourself, you know, in these situations where you're going to get rejected over and over again, or even willing to wait tables, you know, just to have a job. But if you'd have waited tables in Orange County, that situation would have never happened.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
You had to have been in Beverly Hills at that time.
Yes.
For that to happen.
Yeah. And that's exactly what Mauricio, his name, Mauricio Umansky, who's one of the biggest, he's a celebrity real estate agent. That was his big advice to people in the meetings I would sit in, taking notes and everything. And he'd give his inspirational speeches that he's so known for. And he would say, you know, when I was an up and coming agent, I would just go to the Four Seasons bar and I would just be there. And, you know, and then I would strike up conversations and then be like, "Oh, do you need to sell a house?" Or, "Oh, are you looking for a house?" And that's how he built it. It's just what you're saying. It's really putting yourself there and being open and to receiving.
Yeah, and I remember on the other podcast when you shared this story, you were talking about that there was a lady with crystals.
Yes,
the house. Yeah,
that's the house I was just telling you about. The 25.
But I think that's funny. You know, the crystal guy, and then there's a connection, and then was that your first introduction in understanding? Okay, there's something special between me and crystals.
Probably yes. In my adult life.
Yeah, in your adult life.
Yeah, absolutely. We connected with that big time. and she was a big client of his, and sometimes she would just want me to go over there and like talk crystals with her. So I would, you know, and it's like, it was really cool.
So when you were around the crystals, did you have like an instant connection with them, or?
Yeah. It was just an instant love. And to be honest with you too, is whenever I read about them, like if I read them in a book or online, is I'll just know it. It's like almost I'm just refreshing my mind, like refreshing myself on it. And it just comes really naturally for me to remember like the names or the energetic qualities, the certain types of minerals inside. For whatever reason, I have a big affinity towards it. I've gotten read by psychic type people that have told me that I'm a big crystal, my soul is a big crystal master from Atlantis and all this crazy stuff. But basically what I know is that I have a really like strong instant connection with it. And it seems like whenever I read it, I'll just know it. Like, so that's why I'm able to help people to learn about crystals. I get people all the time that's like, I'm just getting into this. Like, how does this work? And I think that it's really cool that I was kind of in it was in the acting world and in the real estate world for the time. So I was able to be, I guess you would call it a little bit more grounded in this life and not be so like a typical, like, you know, quote unquote, like hippie or airy fairy type of crystal person. Sometimes they get that rap, that connotation.
Yes. Yeah. And it's almost kind of, and then you're kind of looking at it like, yeah, like this person seems kind of too out there.
Yeah. I can't connect with that in the same way. So it's really cool that I like looking back on the life and also trying to not beat myself up so much for like, why didn't I get it sooner? You know, it's like, why, how did I not tap into that earlier? Well, I think it was really intentional. And I think it's like I said, it's really important to follow your gut and to really be where you are and just to take everything as stepping stones.
Yeah. Cause it's just so interesting that you're in a job. I mean, that is all Hollywood vanity, you know, fake. You know, if you want, reality shows are pretty fake.
Oh, they're very, very, very fake. Yeah.
And then you're in this Beverly Hills real estate thing, and you know, and then it's all like this facade and you know, high-end brands and all that.
Yeah.
And there's this lady with these crystals. It just seems so out of place.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, it's not really, because a lot of these people do know about this stuff, and it's like we were talking a little bit about the Freemasons, right? So this is this secret society of men that get together and talk about astrology and all these like esoteric things, these magical type things, you know. But then they're sworn to secrecy, and they can't tell it. They can't let the secret out because you know, for whatever reason you could say. But I think a lot of it too is so that they can hold the power and know about the crystals and the energy and the spiritual connection, but keeping the mainstream stuff really watered down in that regards, and just make it really like, you know, when you go to Disneyland, like, oh, like I'm eating the pretzel and I'm the dipping dots, and just like, oh, it's pretty, but it's like behind the scenes, those people are really much tapped into the
and I remember you were talking about that being on sets and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
so much esoteric.
Yeah. So then with the real estate stuff, really quick, is I was his assistant for a year. And then I moved and I started the marketing department there because it was still a new company. So I started the marketing department and grew that. And when I left, the year I left, we did $2.2 billion in sales. Wow. As a small real estate company. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was really, really nuts. So we would sell $55 million and up. And we did the Playboy Mansion. We did tons of celebrity homes. You know, I can't really say, but because I signed NDAs, but like we were working with like all like major celebrities and doing all that stuff. So it was a really big job, and it was like, you know, seemingly it was like everything that the world and my parents and everything like would want for me, right?
The epitome of success.
The epitome of success.
Right.
So I reached it, and then I started getting some little signs that I ignored, you know, some certain like behaviors of myself, and also like drinking a lot of alcohol and partying a lot. And big part of my job was brand partnerships. So you mentioned like the really high end brands. I think that was my job, was to meet with them and to think about cool parties we could do at our homes to promote them, and like cool activations. So it was very much like, you know, cocktails and like fancy, all that kind of stuff. Right. And it was just like, after a time, and like I said, I started to ignore the signs. I couldn't ignore it anymore, and I basically just needed to exit. I needed to exit stage left, so to speak. And it was cool because I started to recognize like things were going down and like what's going on. And so really what I wanted to do, and I learned about this through other smaller jobs that I'd had where I didn't necessarily do this, and I wish I would have, was to really make sure to leave while you're on top, to exit while you're on the top before the decline starts to go down. Like it was really important for my own sensibility too, but also too is like it keeps the door open because they've called me to do certain things. I haven't ended up doing it, but like they call me, or certain real estate agents in that work there will call me. It's like, oh, do you need some work or whatever? So it's like, I'm glad that I did that too, because it kept the relationships
open and
nice.
So what is so you're at the top, the pinnacle. You're being successful, drinking, partying, everything that somebody would want.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much. How old were you then?
I was 20. It was like 23 through 28 were the years I was there.
Those are like the dream of a 23 to 28 year old.
Absolutely.
And so, but something was off. And so you're like, what I wanted to ask you is, when you knew something was off to the time that you finally, like in New York, where you heard the subway and then you're like, I'm out. 2 days later, you left. How long did that take you? Because I know that lifestyle would pull you in, it would suck you in,
and the money and everything too. It's
how long did that take you before you knew that something was off, and when you finally exited stage left?
I would say about 8 months to a year. I would guess, and it was like finally it got to a point where it was like all my best friends that I had there, and this is, you spend so many hours working, especially when you're a young go-getter, right? And so these were really my best friends. They just turned on me and they started like talking about me and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, instead of being like falling into a victim mode, I was like, what's going on here? And then I finally got to a point, it just hit me one night. I was at an event at a house and it just hit me. It was like, I gotta leave. I gotta get out of here. Like there's no support for me here anymore. And it's that same feeling when I was at the subway, when I was, all throughout life, when it was just like, it's time. It's time to go. And it was really hard. It was really, really, really scary. I mean, I just quit. Everyone's like, what? And then they're like, no, don't. We can work it out. No, all this kind of stuff, and I had to be really strong and resolved and just do it. And, and I threw one last event and it was like the greatest one I had done. And then I was out of there, and it was really scary and I took some time off. And then that's when I gave myself some space, like just let myself, like basically what it felt like is up to that point, I was just hurling through life, like just constantly busy, trying to make shit happen, get it done. And then I took some time to breathe and to let myself think a little bit. And then that's when the crystals started to come in, and I would go to crystal stores and read and learn. And I took that time to really dig into that stuff. And so after a while of doing that, I was like, well, I have to make money too. So then I really entered into the film world. So in my adult life, I hadn't really done that film so much. It was all the stage. So I was really going into film because when you work a film job, you'll be there really long days, like up to 14, 15, 16 hour days. And you might only be used for 45 minutes to an hour of that whole day. So all those hours you're sitting in the holding room, like with nothing to do. Well, what I did is I would bring the Law of One, or I would look up different YouTube channels, start to learn and understand about astrology or learn about crystals more. And so I really used that time to educate myself while I'm getting paid, while I'm getting, SAG benefits, union benefits for health insurance and all that stuff. Is I was using that downtime to really give myself my own degree in a way, is kind of how it is, what it seems like. And even the numerology, the past lives, all that stuff. I would do numerology readings on the sets for people and just learning about it. And so I think that was a really cool utilization of that time. And I think that even people could do that, whatever job you have, is that you can have like that YouTube channel going, or that podcast going on in the background, where you can be learning while you're doing your work too.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, because there's a lot of people that will sit at home and say, and they're waiting for their big break or whatever, instead of actually you're working 12, 14, 16-hour days. And in that process of finding that time, sitting there and self-educating yourself for your true passion.
Yeah. And it's so cool these days to have your phone and you have access to the whole world's information right there. It's so neat. Like what a time we live in.
It's so interesting to me. I was talking to somebody the other day and they became a receptionist somewhere, and that allowed them to be able to study in between the phone calls.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. And I was like, find that type of job where you can have that opportunity.
Yes.
And if they're fine with it and you're fine with it, then so as an adult, you begin to get into acting.
Mm-hmm.
Are you enjoying the acting?
Oh yeah. It's great. I love it. And it's definitely, that's something I've always done and I was always a natural at. And it feeds my soul on a level that nothing else quite does. Right. Readings in a way are a type of performance, but it's different. It's more of like a channeling type of a thing. But for the acting, it's like, especially too, is I feel like my soul really wants to be part of more projects that are enlightening to people and to bring out some of this esoteric, we're talking like the stuff the Freemasons try to keep withheld.
Right.
Is be more part of projects that bring that information to people. It's like CrystalGuy. I mean, that's the whole thing about CrystalGuy is like sharing that knowledge in a way that people can understand it and click with it. And that's as I move forward in my acting career, that's what I want to put out there and attract more of are projects that are incorporating more of this type of esoteric knowledge or like disclosure of certain types of things that have been kept secret or hidden.
In a lot of Hollywood's that, I mean, it's known for that, but I mean, there's a lot of different types of groups and a lot of secret societies and teachings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you saw it when you were in the different studios, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, big time. The signs and the symbols, big time. I was like really started to get, and that's one of the big things I was studying on the sets was symbolism. And all of a sudden I'm like, holy moly, it's all around me. And it's funny because the first job that I ended up like booking like a season regular type of a role. It's very, very small, very bit part, but it was a member of the sex magic cult that Jack Parsons was a part of.
Yes.
We talked about that a little bit, but that was very much like me learning about these secret societies and this information. And then here I am on the set and I'm like being a part of the sex magic that they're going. And then it turns out that I was a stand-in and a photo double for both of the lead guys in that show. I worked on that show all left and right, and I was like big figures, like oh man, who's the guy that's like the really witchy guy? Like he's bald and I can't remember his name right now. The
is he a?
He's like the father of like the dark arts.
Anton LaVey?
Oh no, he's close to that.
That's Satanist dude.
Yeah, it's very close to that. He was from England. But anyway,
I know who you're talking about.
But I was doing a scene like with him on the show, like as the stand-in, like before, and I was just like, "Whoa, like what is?"
Oh, Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley, that's who it was.
There we go,
and I had just learned about this guy and like all of his like stuff that he taught, and I was like the beast and all this. I was like, "Whoa, like this is crazy." So I was definitely getting signs. I think that everybody, no matter who you are in any sort of entrepreneurial thing that you want to embark on, you're going to have signs along the way, especially if you're going to be in the right place. I would say just to keep being open to the sands that shift and be able to pivot when you need to.
Yeah. And I think that's a testament to your life, what you've been able to do. He just hit his kombucha on the mic.
Sorry guys.
He's got Dr. What is this? Dr. Brew. I thought it said Dr. Drew. Oh, I was like, Dr. Drew has kombucha?
Hey.
Yeah. So here you are. You're in. You're doing this. You're starting. So what happened? How many years did you do adult acting before you came to Albuquerque?
So that's about 4. About 4. Yep. In LA.
During that process of those 4 years, that was basically your 4-year education.
Yeah, it was like a whole like a degree. Like that's funny too, is I've noticed that it'll be like in my life, like it'll be like in force. It's almost like, is it because our school system is like that with high school and college, and you're kind of just trained to be that way, or is that something is that a pattern?
But there's a number. What does the number 4 mean?
The 4 is all about building a solid foundation and being very like process oriented, like step by step. It's like what we're talking about. It's like is not getting too tied into being like, this is the one thing I'm going to do. It's like being like very one step at a time, like building a strong foundation and then building up from there.
So every 4 years you're just building
I guess so.
So you're doing that, and then all of a sudden you and your boyfriend decide to move to Albuquerque. And so what was the draw to move here?
Well, the film industry just totally went kaput in March. And, and they were saying, well, it's not going to be back for a while. So there was that. And then also with like the Black Lives Matter protests that were going on, like right all around us, the energy in LA just felt like it was that same thing. It was like, it's time, right? And then there were certain signs like, where we were living and certain things that were just like, that happened. And Greg and I were, okay, like we're going to drive out of LA because we've been here for the whole pandemic. So we're going to drive out and go to our happy place, which is New Mexico.
Right.
So we drove out to New Mexico. And when we're here to Albuquerque, we got to Albuquerque and we were, we just landed and we're like, oh, what should we do tomorrow? Like, I wonder what the apartments look like out here. Like, let's see. Right. And then we did a meditation with one of the archangels that we work with who helps you to find what you're looking for. So we did that meditation and Greg gets up and he goes to the computer and opens it and he's like, oh, here's a place we can go check out. And so we called them and we went the next morning and we signed immediately.
That's funny.
We got there and we were like, this is it. And we just felt it. And we've been here like 3 or 4 months now and we love it. It's just, it's totally amazing. We were very much led here as a very divine type of a situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of special energy here, especially here in New Mexico.
A lot. It's a very spiritual place, and it's in the culture, but it's also too. You could just feel it when you're here.
Plus, there's a lot of acting going on, and I think it's growing.
Yes. Oh, it's growing big time. That Netflix has just bought the Albuquerque studios, which is a huge studios. Amazon is just bought us studios out here too, and then NBC Universal just bought us studios out here.
Yeah, I know this complex that I live at here, Netflix rents it out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and have actors here. And then they have like a big, I haven't seen it in a while, maybe because of COVID, but they have a big bus that meets out in the front here and then picks everybody up.
Oh, no way. It takes them over to the studio. Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Because I imagine there's a lot of out of town people and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, with COVID and everything, especially too, is they want to hire more local people so they can test them ahead of time without, traveling them, putting them up in a place like this, in per diems. Because when the union, you have all these things that you have to pay for. Well, the producers and the studios can bypass those types of things by hiring people that are here.
Is there a lot of work here? I mean, probably before COVID there was, but...
Yeah, it seems like there is actually. And I just signed with an agent on Friday.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. An agent in town. And so she's been submitting me for stuff and I've made some self-tapes and things like that. So we'll see. But it seems like the word on the street is that most productions are trying to get out of LA and shoot other places because of the people and, the COVID and all that kind of stuff. It's just California's so expensive too. Well, a lot of productions are moving here. So I keep having dreams about being back on a movie set and working in movies and film. So I'm keeping myself open to that and really wanting to, and actually I'm actually more than that, I'm going after it and really, and sending out my stuff to certain projects I hear about, casting directors I hear are casting a new movie. I'll send my stuff to them, and I'm very proactive in that way.
So basically, you have 2 jobs.
Yeah,
is what you've gone down to, and both of these are your passion because you love acting.
I would say 3 actually.
Okay,
so it's the acting, and then it's the readings, like what we just did,
right?
And then it's the crystals.
Oh, so okay. So you separate the crystals and the readings.
Yeah.
Because one is more channeling.
Yeah.
And the other one is providing information and education.
Yeah, and selling and exactly like that.
So, see, this is so interesting to me. This is why I wanted to have you on, because there's a lot of people that think they have to do one thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're so passionate. It's that old story of that, and I love it. It was like MIT or somewhere, and they're standing up. And the professor's like, how many of you are super passionate about this? How many of you would love this? If you got paid, I know this job's going to pay you $250,000 or more a year. If you got paid $30,000, how many of you would stay here? And like 10 people raised their hand, and there was 200 and something people. And he's like, all 100 and some of you need to leave.
Yes.
You need to. It's so funny how we sell ourselves for money.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Right.
It just amazes me. And then not thinking that in this, especially nowadays, you can do 3 things.
Yep.
I mean, and each of them will pay you money.
Yes. Yes.
And,
and will fulfill a different aspect of what's important to you.
So like in your life right now, you've just moved, you've been here for a few months, you've got an agent, the film industry is growing here in Albuquerque. Mm-hmm. Obviously you're doing YouTube videos, you're doing readings, doing more and more of those. Mm-hmm. What does the future look like for you? What in like a perfect world?
Yeah.
What would you be doing?
A perfect world would be booking a role on a show or a movie.
Right.
That's very much about this type of stuff. So it could be like any type of thing that's helping people and inform them, not just bubblegum pop stuff that's just like, I'm just going to stare at this. That really empowers people and gives people knowledge and information to heal. It's very much important to me. And it's hard sometimes when you have that drive and then you look at the stuff most of the stuff that's being produced, like the TV shows and the movies, and it's just the same old stuff. It's just like recapitulated, just the same old storylines because they, you can get into the different reasons why that might be, but it just seems like I want to be a part of projects and I'm meant to be part of projects that are really empowering towards people. So that's definitely the biggest goal for my acting is to work on projects like that. And then meanwhile is while I'm on those sets, while I'm meeting these people, helping them to heal with past life readings, numerology, like and crystals, incorporating all that stuff, and then to continue to spread the word about the healing power of crystals and why do you care about past lives? Like using that platform that film industry could provide. And I'm not saying it needs to, but you're asking me perfect world. This is what the perfect world looks like, and to use that sphere of influence to spread healing to people.
So it's about taking your gift and serving and helping others.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's hard not to get the ego in the way. It's really, really hard. I mean, shit.
Well, especially with acting, yeah.
Yeah, oh man. And they want you to be this certain thing. But it's like, it's funny, and I think this is true for any profession and for all the entrepreneurs listening. It's anytime that you really connect with yourself and who you really are, and you feel confident in that's when people are drawn to you and they want you to be part of their projects.
Yes.
It's when you're feeling really secure in yourself and what you're wanting to go after. It's a beautiful thing. It's very magical.
No, I love that. So if somebody wants to, because I want to make sure that they get a hold of you, if somebody wants to do a reading or they maybe have questions on crystals or something, I was going to ask you this. So have you ever thought about after you do a reading, then suggesting crystals from the reading?
Oh yeah, I do that.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do that.
Because I was thinking about that. I was like, I wonder what type of.
Oh yeah, no,
I know you mentioned the bones with the Celtic thing, but
yeah, no, but more specifically, what crystals work with, especially when I'm over at the shop, which is High Vibe Crystals here in Albuquerque, and we have a great online store. Is that then I'll take them into the shop and I'll, show them what crystals or sometimes what I'll do in my readings is I'll write down on the piece of paper where I do their numbers is I'll write like some crystal recommendations, almost like a prescription.
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. It's like it could almost be like custom made.
Yeah,
to my marketing brain always goes into play too.
Yeah,
but I mean, everybody likes that. Like if this is specific for me, well, each of these cards, I would imagine the cards and the past lives would have some energy level with the crystals.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's like the cards too that I use are very much structured in a way that actually is very in line with the Pythagorean numerology system, which is what I use.
Right.
The people that created these cards chose the colors and chose the pictures, everything to utilize the numerology energy. So that's really interesting. I should look into that. That's cool. Yeah.
No, I just thought of it, because it's like each of those cards are 6 things. Each of those cards, there's probably, whether there's healing that needs to be involved or whatever, there's probably a crystal that would go along with it.
Absolutely.
Or a mineral.
There's a crystal for everything.
Awesome. Well, perfect. Thanks for being on the show. Once again, your Instagram is?
At the CrystalGuy 23.
So we have the Crystal Guy in the house.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.